Hello YouTube! Today I'm gonna present two builds. Both of them are death related, but thematically in different way. First, this is a level 36 death ritual build. The goal is to build all kind of death related weapons, and health and steeple as well. So the stats are a bit thin spread. Having additional 10 int in flask allows me to cast some spells. Now, because this is int build, I am unable to cast death sorceries, so instead I went with Night Maiden's Mist for that life-sapping effect, and few cold sorceries, as Ghost Flame builds up Frost. Health and Steeple self-buff lasts twice as long since 1.07, and it's really strong at low level now, adding 110 magic damage and 80 Frost build-up. I use Staff of Laws because I kinda like the way it looks, and it buffs few spells I use. Adula's Moonblade got reduced FP consumption and increased stamina attack power against shields, and Frostbite status build up against guarded enemies, so it's quite nice now. Honestly, one of the revelations of this build was Night Maiden's Mist. It was main boss killer. That's how I dealt with Astel and Adula at room level 36, but I didn't realize how potent it is in PvP. I really like how it's actually a projectile you can aim, and how it keeps dealing damage after leaving radius for a bit. It's great for zoning and as a strategical tool. Night Shard is a small pew-pew that does more than average damage, thanks to Staff of Loss, and death birds show up at night, so I've made a stretch here. I heard somewhere that Health and Steeple weapon art, Ruiner's Ghost Flame, with 107 got a unique buff that doesn't exist anywhere else, by also increasing poise damage. I can't really confirm that, as two-handed greatsword is generally enough to poise break anyone. I am not using frost pots to immediately proc frostbite, although I could. I just don't really want to bring that to rune level 36, and this way sword can do a bigger chunk of damage at once. Obviously, I can't really use Explosive Ghost Flame at this level, nor I had a desire to fight that death bird in Snowfield, so I went with Cannon of Jaime for big Kerplosion. I think I can never go wrong with this spell, just because it's so fun to use. Got a bit R1 heavy here, but it worked out. I ended up 3 or 4 shotting most of players, especially with most swinging out of hit stun or just not rolling, so if I don't want to be too mean, I can just not buff the sword or switch weapons. Here's more strategical use of Night Maiden's Mist. Almost ideal situation in a narrow corridor for someone to retreat into it. I learned that Staff of Loss doesn't buff it, but it doesn't really matter. One issue with Night Maiden's Mist, it often tanks my FPS, but I imagine I am not the only one on receiving end of that. Looking for host, see that it's dual katana Kevin, and I decide to swap weapons. See what turns out of it. The fact this happened solidified this clip in the video. And ironically, this Ash of War hits hard, and surprisingly I got more than one clip of it landing. I can see it working with trades, but obviously doesn't make it any better. Now, let's talk about what we know in the lore. Understandably, There's little to no information about the world before the Earth Tree and the Golden Order. In regards to death in particular, we only have a few significant mentions of what became of the dead and their souls prior to the Earth Tree. The most recognizable of those are the Deathbirds. I'll just go ahead and say that Deathbirds and Deathrite birds are pretty much same thing. Twinbird is said to be the envoy of an outer god, and mother of all Deathbirds. This character's name is Twinbird's Envoy. We should make him Envoy of Envoy. We know that in time when there was no Earth Tree, death was burned in ghost flame, and Deathbirds were keepers of that fire. They raked out the ashen remains of the dead from their kilns. So Deathbirds wield ghost flame and use it to burn away the dead, and raking these ashes generated the ancient death hex, a mysterious magic that was once thought lost. It would seem that hexes are magic that arise from vengeful spirits, which could imply that Deathbird's duty was not entirely consensual. Sacrificial acts also depicts Deathbirds as malevolent entities, and the branch swords were used in rituals where sacrifice clung so tenaciously to life, so the wording doesn't do them any favors. Final piece is specifically tied to Deathrite birds, who had a special relationship to certain humans, priests seeking resurrection. If you take a close look at the Deathrite bird, you'll see that there are dozens of spirits that hold Death Ritual Spear in their wing. My question is whether this distant resurrection is their existence alongside the Deathrite bird, or a genuine flesh resurrection that we never get to witness in game. To summarize it, I am under the impression that the Deathbirds do have their own kind of rebirth, but only a selected few of those followers are set to get to enjoy it. That said, burning the dead in ghost flame is not shown to bring any sort of meaningful rebirth, not like the case with ancestral followers Precious Buds or Scarlet Rot. Now for the next build, I use Fierce Mist and mostly Eclipse Shuttles, all at level 25. Here I'm showing stats and talismans to make it clear how I got those stats, and also using 10 decks in Flask. As you may have guessed, this build is kinda mean overall, but such is life of low level invader. For some scenarios you just need that possibility you can opt out of. Because Death Flare adds flat holy damage, Eclipse Shuttle also puts out big numbers. You can follow up Ash of War with Explosion, and that's kinda main way to apply Death Blight. It takes insanely long to go down once you get the build up, but there's also literally two things in the entire game that viably build it up. Rancor pods scale with Int and Faith as well, so they deal rather high damage here. Eclipse Shuttle does 40% of the damage through shields, so it's not a good idea to block it. Honestly, I've never liked dual curved swords, so I rarely use it, and most of the time I don't need that much damage anyway. First 3 of the day. I would have much preferred if it was over-leveled Phantom though. To mitigate Marika's social, I have offline hard tier in Flask. Unless someone is blatantly overleveled, it doesn't matter that much. I'd say that below 30 scaling works somewhat reasonably, but not in case of Arcane of course. I ended up putting Night Maiden's Mist on this build as well. It's simply too good for just 14 Int. Most players lack critical information and just backtrack or stand in it. Not gonna lie, I'm not used to playing without poise, but I'd say it's fair considering the build I'm running right now. I do wish it was overall turned off, like in Dark Souls 3. I feel like PvP would have been much higher quality without it, and things like poise can work completely differently in between PvP and PvE. Here a little interaction happens with the fog ball. I didn't know it would be there, but host couldn't manage. Banished Knight, of course. Next invasion happens in identical zone, but here I demonstrate how stupid shuttle damage is, and how Fast Mist also an excellent smoke screen. Black Blade Asher 4 is also crazy strong at low level, and hard to dodge due to phantom hits. This overleveled Phantom is arcane build, so he's gonna do shit zillion damage and on top of that high vitality, so it's gonna be challenging to deathblight him. Seems like the host is my only option here, and no regrets about it. Soon we are gonna have the math on what exactly is wrong with overleveled Phantoms, aside from their existence. I will say that unless extreme cases like this, range after level 40 is more pleasant regarding overlevels than mid-level like 60 to 90. This crew is more or less honest. It is impressive though how host first got great stars from Altus and then went into Limgrave Catacombs. Opposite problem is those Phantom doing no damage to me, and me doing all the damage. Don't ask me how that didn't hit me, because I don't know, but I'll take it. Now it's lore time. We have reference to the fact that Destined Death was an integral part of existence before the Golden Order, and there's also the fact that all instances of reincarnation that we see happened are beyond the purview of the Golden Order. So that, in my opinion, shows an evident overlap between Destined Death and reincarnation historically. As far as I know, the basic idea is that the eclipse was a traditional way for dead demigods to be revived. Their souls were kept in the walking mausoleums, protected by the headless mausoleum knights, and the eclipse would keep Destined Death at bay, which allowed those souls to come back. The infamous Deathblight flame is pale yellow and associated with Prince of Death or the eclipse. It appears on the Shootal and Mausoleum Knights. It seems like this death filtered through the Erdtree's roots via Godwin's corpse, so it makes sense it got this color. As for soulless demigods, I think we know for sure that Godwin is soulless, as only his body part is alive. Others could be either more Black Knife victims or just dead demigods. There's a connection between Miquella and Eclipse colorless sun. He wants Godwin to die through death, or at least wanted to, during his fundamentalist days. Miquella's character revolves around the concept of making things whole. The Albinorics, misbegotten, and those who live in death are all imperfect beings, because they are incomplete, flawed, or impure. And the same goes for Miquella himself. The Eclipse in Soul is trying to grant life to the soulless demigods, or to make them whole again. and there's one ghost addressing Mikula. Says that prayers were lacking, and the sun has not been swallowed, and his comrade remains soulless. Overall, the whole topic of Eclipse, Ghost Flame and Soulless Demigods is one of my favorites in the lore, but it looks somewhat abrupt to me. So I'm on that DLC copium. That doesn't mean that I want more Deathblight spells or weapons though. And that's gonna be it for the video. I hope you liked the clips. The builds are cool and fun, so I urge you to try those weapons if you haven't yet. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.